Okay, welcome to the Tony Cossack Show. Today we have Daniel Osborne on,
Happy to
co-founder
be here.
and COO of Zenjoy. Daniel, how's it going this morning, man?
Very, very well. Very well. I got more than enough sleep last night. Like normally I'm a 5 or 6 hour sleep type of guy, and I think I got like 7.5, almost 8 hours last night. So I'm feeling
Yeah,
blessed. I got my coffee, like I was showing you, this massive cup of coffee. I live on the
yeah.
stuff, and I'm ready to go, man. I love talking. I mean, like I haven't done too many podcasts, but really trying to step more into it in 2025. So when you reached out, I was like, this is a great opportunity. Let's do it.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I love it. I love it. So let's just jump right into it, man. Tell me, what is Zenjoy?
Yeah, the quick answer is a stress
Okay.
relief drink. That's really what we're
Okay.
going for. But I can kind of break that down, and we've had
Yeah,
many
yeah, yeah,
different iterations. I
definitely.
mean, we've been trying to build this brand for it's been years. I mean, the Zenjoy brand as it is has only been around now for about 2 years. Really, what we do is we took adaptogens, so it's ashwagandha, it's L-theanine, it's lemon balm. All of those help manage cortisol. Really, the breakdown is ashwagandha is cortisol management. That's KSM 66. It's the only like regulated grass, which is generally recognized as safe if you're not kind of in the food space.
Okay.
Version of ashwagandha, it's the whole food standard, the mom standard. Really, the FDA doesn't do a great job of monitoring this stuff, so we have to do our own due diligence and make sure it's as quality as possible, right? So we're using that ashwagandha that helps manage cortisol. We have L-theanine that's helpful for racing thoughts. It's actually in a lot of energy drinks nowadays, just to kind of keep
Okay.
the fear down. But we're using it really just to kind of keep you focused, help with the racing thoughts that come with anxiety and stress. And then lemon balm is the last one, and that's just another calming additive. It's actually grown like here naturally on the East Coast, which is really cool. And so what we do is we just take those three ingredients, about 500 milligrams across all of them. It's super transparent on our packaging. I grabbed a couple cans. This is kind of what it looks like here. And this is
Okay.
version 5. We actually are just launching version 6 of the can now. But that's really the idea. I mean, there's so many energy drinks. There's a million things that like I'm drinking my coffee right now. You know, everything has its use case, but we've just seen the world go into this crazy level of stress. And whether it's UFOs in the sky or the next president being elected or wars overseas, there's a million things that people are stressing about nowadays, especially my generation. I'm 27. The kids that are coming after me, the stress level has even gotten higher. And maybe that's having to do with social media and just how we interact with each other, how our family systems are. But we've just seen a need for a product like this, you know, and there's always been things like Ollie or Goalie that are in supermarkets now that have the same ingredients. It's just a gummy. And we just see that that's not very sticky. You know, people don't want to talk about it. It's not interesting. And so we said, let's
Right.
just build a beverage brand around this. And to give a little bit more context to the history behind the brand, like I said, this is version 5. Version
Okay.
6 we just released and is now going and rolling out into our stores. And that's a stress relief drink on the can itself. It really has that breakdown right there. And then we have more information on the back as far as the ingredients and how they actually work. But we started years ago under a different LLC and a different company. My current partners and I, we were minority owners in this business, and
Okay.
we were doing CBD. That's where we started years ago. I mean, we were packing CBD flower bags. This is 5, 6 years ago when it became legal in 2018. And
Yeah.
we decided to jump into a beverage because we were doing very well in that space. We really didn't know what we were doing. You know, we had a warehouse. We were
Yeah,
like
man.
tons of employees, crazy overhead, and we were making good money. I mean, we built to 7 figures in a year and a half in revenue, which is really, really good, you know. But with that happening, when the whole entire market changed, I don't know how much you know about the cannabis market, but stuff they call Delta 8, which is like kind of synthetic weed, pretty much came into the market.
Yes.
We didn't want to really sell drugs. That wasn't our goal. I mean, we were all on kind of the natural medicine side of things. And with that, we kind of had our business fall off. And with that, also at the same time, it was Zen CBD beverages. It wasn't a good product. It was 10 milligrams CBD. It didn't taste good. It was in plastic.
Okay.
A lot of things needed to be fixed. And unfortunately, at that time, both sides of the company failed and we had to close shop because once you stop making revenue and you have whatever 20 grand overhead, I mean, we had warehouse employees, we had sales staff, the admin team, we had 7,200 square foot warehouse. Once that falls apart, it very quickly, when you can't pay your bills, you need to close doors. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, at that time, we had almost just gotten through COVID. And at that time, we decided, hey, we need to shelf this. None of us were really interested in going anymore. There was a couple of us that said, hey, let's try again. A couple months later, you know, we got together and we decided to make it was Zen Wellness. It was a 16 ounce. I wish I had a can. of that. But I'll have to send you some pictures in the future once we finish this, so you can check out kind of the different renditions. 'Cause I love showing it off.
Okay.
Um, and that product we worked with, I'm not going to name them because they've kind of got mad at us for naming them in the past.
Okay. Okay.
A local group in Baltimore. There's not many of them, so you could figure it out for yourself if you want to do your little research.
Yeah.
As far as the viewers here. And so it was called Zen Wellness. It was CBD as well. And it was a 16-ounce can. We were going to just launch two flavors, which were going to be our honey and our lavender, which we've had since the beginning of the kind of the Zen concept. And they didn't pasteurize the drinks correctly. For anyone that doesn't know, when it comes to beverage, food, anything that you see in the grocery store, 99% of it is going to be pasteurized, whether it's a dry product like cereal or it's a beverage in a can. The only thing that you're really not having is pasteurized is obviously your vegetables and fruit. You know, it's not going to be
Okay.
killing the bacteria because it's all natural stuff. And things like kombucha. You know, if kombucha is pasteurized, then you have no effect because you're killing all the scobies, all the bacteria that makes kombucha what it is. You're going to kill all
Okay.
that. But for traditional food and beverage, you don't want to make people sick. So usually
Right.
what we do is it's called tunnel pasteurization. So these cans are on a conveyor belt once they're filled and they have a top on them, and they go through this conveyor and they're heated to, I think it's like 165 degrees for 50 seconds a minute to kill the bacteria, right? And there's food science
Okay.
that have broken that down. And then all of that is timed to make sure that there is no bacteria growth, and that's what gives you shelf life on a product. And so that's why our cans have, I mean, obviously we use citric acid to kind of help with that shelf life as well, but that's why we have 18 months in our can. That's why most products have some type of 6 to a year expiration date on them, and that's coming from pasteurization. And there's many other versions of pasteurization. I'm just giving you the one example. And
Yeah.
we thankfully never actually even took those products to shelf because we had taken a couple cases. We were super excited. I have videos of all this stuff. And one of my partners, my current partners now, his brother cracks open a can and takes a swig and spits out like a ball of bacteria.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so we go to the manufacturer and we're like,
what
what
happened?
yeah, what's happening here? Like it's full of bacteria. Was it not pasteurized correctly? They even showed us the reports actually that show it wasn't pasteurized correctly and that it didn't sit in the tunnel for long enough time to kill the bacteria at a high enough temperature. Like we had the reports. And we were like, can we, it's, I mean, it's almost $60,000, Tony. 60,000,
Yeah, I
like
was gonna
all
say, I mean,
different.
how much did all that cost just to
Yeah.
get those couple cases?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we were doing a full run. So it was, I mean, we had just taken those sample cases, but we probably did, I mean, 20 pallets almost of the product, I want to say.
Oh
It was a big
my
run of pallets. I mean,
goodness.
we spent almost $60,000 to make that happen. And they pretty much gave us the finger and said, hey, take us to court. That was, I mean, obviously they
Oh,
didn't do that,
wow.
right? If they were like sending us lawyer, we would send them a letter with our lawyer, they wouldn't respond. And it got to the point where the lawyers we were talking to and spending the rest of the money we had because we had nothing else to do. We're kind of like, hey, the only thing you guys can do as far as next steps is take this litigation. That's all you can do. And at
Yeah,
that
and then God knows how long that would have lasted.
Yeah, and we don't have the money for that, at all. We had already used the last couple $1,000s that we didn't use on that production run doing like some work with lawyers to try to make it happen. And at that point, we kind of had to close down, and we were fortunate enough to be in an accelerator program at the time, which I will give you the name of because they're great.
Yeah.
We're still with a lot of these mentors today. It's called Beyond SKU. It's a program called SKU that's across the United States. There's, I want to say, 4 or 5 different chapters. And that concept, you
Okay.
come in, you give a little equity away. They give you a stipend check to be able to go to and from the actual accelerator. That's over, I think it was 14 weeks, I want to say, usually at the beginning of the year. So we did the one in New York, which is Beyond SKU. And we had access to
Okay.
50 mentors all across food and beverage. These are people like Eric Schnell, who's one of the founders in New York. Great guy. He started Steez. If you're familiar with that brand, it's in many of the conventional and natural groceries. He pretty much was like the first or organic like tea in the stores. They're getting natural.
Okay. Wow. And you got to work with him
Yes,
directly?
yeah, yeah. And it was a sparkling tea. And they're still in stores today. I mean, if I showed you a can, you'd probably be like, "Oh, I've seen that before," you know.
Okay.
And so like he was one of the mentors, and every team, like there was, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us as far as different groups of CPG brands. It's all consumer packaged goods. It's all like there was Mevo, which was, no, it's Mevo, which was wine in a bag, and they're still around. There's us, a few other brands as well. CPG is extremely hard, so now it's been so long. A few of them have left the space, but
Okay.
with those mentors, we were able to kind of reformulate. They passed us a what's called a co-manufacturer, which we still work with today. And
Mm-hmm.
we were able to raise a little bit of more money plus the stipend check. I mean, we just made it work, like we got that
Yeah,
check,
you just
we made
grind it.
friends and family, exactly. And instead of using that stipend money to like get to New York City or stay in New York City, we're in Maryland. So we would just drive up, leaving here at 5 in the morning, because usually those accelerated stays would start at like 9:30, 10. So we'd leave here at like 5, we would get there at like 9-ish, get some breakfast, and then do the full day and then drive back. And we were doing that
Yeah,
once
man.
and making it work. And at that time, it was still Zen hemp infusions. And we had a little bit of CBD, but we had worked with the mentors and they said, hey, look at ashwagandha, look at L-theanine, look at lemon balm. And this gentleman's name was Ken Israel. He's a phenom in the supplement space. He does a lot of
Okay.
consulting in that space now, still today. As a good friend of ours, and he was the one who said, "Hey, like we're not professionals. You know what I mean? Like we've just learned from the pros." Um, and then that brand, we realized after we sold through the first set of products, and the cans looked very similar to this. They just said Zen hemp infusions. They had CBD on them. They weren't as defined as a product as they are now.
Okay.
We were kind of sitting there one night and we were like, we have to get rid of the CBD. We can't sell into stores. At this time, unfortunately, the local health department from where we live was like even coming after us because technically CBD is everywhere and everyone knows about it, but in food and beverage, it's still illegal in Maryland
Right.
and federally, of course, it's illegal.
Yeah.
So we were like, we have to step away from it. And so we were kind of fielding people, trying to figure out what our name change would be. We had offers from five to $50,000 of people saying, hey, like we could do this for you, like we'll help you figure it out. And that was going to be the branding as well as the name change. And we really didn't have the funds and we didn't want to give away the equity to do that. And so we just said, let's try to do it ourselves. And we've spent so much time, I mean, probably thousands of hours across the three of us now doing sampling events and talking to people in person. And that's really our marketing here locally in the region is handing out samples, handing out cans to people, talking to them, getting that firsthand experience. And so we kind of had an idea of things that we needed to change. One of them, the big one, CBD, removing that. We used ChatGPT to find the name. I mean, literally like put in, hey, I want to keep it under 10 letters, make it roll off the tongue. I mean, we had been looking at Zen Wellness was something that we were looking at for a while.
Yeah.
We were thinking about even doing what was the other one? Oh, Zenology, which is our LLC name, but that's like
Okay.
the study of Zen, ology and then Zen, so study of
Yeah.
Zen. And after like 100 different names popping up, Zenjoy pops up. And all of us were like, well, okay, we like that. We like that. You got
Yeah.
to do trademark search. You can't just put a name out there and be like, this is,
Right. Right.
you have to look it up. For anyone listening, names are great, but you have to do some trademark research. And just, I literally what I did was watch some podcasts on how to do that, and talk to a couple like lawyers who are friends who said, okay, this is what you want to be looking for. And then I just registered the trademark very simply under tea and beverage and a couple other things in there as well. And we've now gone and expanded that trademark to make sure that we're a little bit more protected. Um,
Yeah.
that was where we started, and now we're registered with that trademark. And
That's
it was,
awesome, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's really I love that. I love the way you and your partners have just grinded it out.
You have to do
How
it.
did you find Beyond Skew?
So that's a funny story too. When we were doing the original CBD company was called Native Hemp that we were all minority partners in. And
Okay.
when we were doing that, we had that office space and we were producing Zen, what was Zen hemp infusions at the time. Originally Zen CBD beverages, and then Zen hemp infusions, and then Zen wellness, and then Zen joy. We decided to start posting on LinkedIn and
Yeah.
all of us had LinkedIn, but one of my partners, Macklin Anderson, he actually has a good amount of following, and that came from a post that he made about the Zen CBD drinks, the Zen hemp infusions years ago that went viral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And so since then, I mean, he has like 10K, 11K on LinkedIn. I'm sure I'll ask him if he wants to jump on here sometime and talk and give his own
Yeah,
version.
man, definitely.
Um, but through that he met Eric, actually, Eric Schnell. And so because Eric was one of the hosts, like they had already actually built their cohort out. They were like not even bringing on other brands for that accelerator that year. And he was like, hey, we can make space for you guys if you're interested in coming. And that's really
That
how we got in. Yeah.
that's awesome. Now, so your partner did a post,
Yep.
went viral, met met Eric,
Yep.
And then you guys just kind of said, okay, we're just going to run with it from here on out, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's like not something that happened quickly, you know. Like, I mean, the Beyond Skew acceptance thing was over maybe 2 or 3 months, and then it
Oh, I
started.
believe it.
That was actually pretty quick. But in the world, I'm sure you know this too. In the world of business, things do very move very, very slowly. And so it's taken us such a long time to kind of get from that point and just believe in the process and believe in the product. And we've never been the type of people to want to um, over raise capital. We don't burn any cash. We've been there with the previous business when we were just buying dumb stuff all the time. You know, we
Yeah.
were thinking about it. We were like, oh, we have all this revenue coming in, but how much of that is real profit? You know, how much of that can you really spend? Especially when we like to look into having a war chest, like what's called a war chest now. You know, you want to make sure you can have a little bit of cash in the bank. Not, of course, you need to be spending money that's coming in, you know, running ads, doing marketing, etc. But we need to have enough cash in the bank to be able to keep the lights on. Or for now, for us now, I mean, we don't have like a traditional office or warehouse or anything like that because why? What's the point? You know, we can do everything virtually. We have a co-working
Yeah.
space that we work out of. We use a 3PL as a warehouse, so we're just paying per pallet in someone else's space. Um, but the big thing for us is making sure we have cash to do production runs. If we don't have a
Yeah.
cash enough to do production runs, then we're out of luck. You know, there's nothing else there. And it took a lot of time. You know, we were blessed to get into that program. We were blessed to meet all the mentors there. And it's so funny because when we got into that program, we had no product. You know, that was when we were doing the Zen Wellness 16-ounce can that was full of bacteria.
Yeah.
Literally, like we had just gotten those samples and we were super excited, and that's what we were going to bring to the accelerator. You know, we thought we had all these opportunities to meet potential investors and all these mentors who've been in food and beverage, and they might be able to help us. And we're all like 21, I think I was 22 at the time, and just like uh, eyes to the stars. You know, just
Right,
thinking
right,
we had
right.
it all. We had it all. And thankfully, I mean, with the mentors that we met, we were able to put some stuff together and kind of go back to the drawing board and eventually build what became Zenjoy. It just took a lot of time to get there. And that's something that we're really big on is like kind of taking it slow, not over raising capital step by step. And we always say like baby steps
Yeah.
every day, you know, and then we're so grateful to be where we are now, where we're in almost 500 locations. We're selling to major chains like Giant, like Food Lion here in the DMV, which I'm sure you're familiar with those locations. It's
Yeah.
Giant
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
And so that's really been the start for us. And so it's just been a ton of hustle and legwork. We actually DSD to a lot of these places, which is called direct to store distribution. So we
Uh-huh.
run vans to Giant, we run our own vans to Food Lion, and that is in itself is a distribution business. And we didn't even think about that. You know, we had the opportunity
Yeah.
to
Getting
Giant.
everything to where you're going.
Yeah, yeah, and now we're bringing on more products and doing that as well because Giant has said, "Hey, you guys are doing a good job. We want you to bring in this brand. We want you to bring in this brand," and it just gives these other companies a kind of a better option than working with the big guys. I mean, there's these Unifies out there, there's the KeHEs out there. Of course, you have your Coke, your Pepsi, your Dr. Pepper, your Canada Dry, right? Your Keurig Dr. Pepper, your Canada Dry, but a lot of those guys, I mean, they're either expensive or they really don't necessarily want you to win, and we can kind of get into
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
too. But it's become more of a rounded business where, of course, we have Zenjoy and we're selling that into the stores and we distribute, and that's our main product. We make most margin on it because we're the ones manufacturing it. It just kind of lines up. And of course, it's my brand. I want it to win as much as possible. You
Right.
know, always working to get extra placements, displays, whether it's extra fridge space, whatever it is. But now we've been doing our own, our I'm sorry, other products as well into stores, which is just adding revenue to our trucks and helping other small brands that are local as well as brands that are coming from across the country to come into the stores like Giant and Conventional, which is huge. And that also just came from us having a crazy idea. I think we're just a little bit crazy in the head, and maybe you have to be. You know, there's so many
I was gonna
founders
say maybe you
that say
have
that.
to be an entrepreneur, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to be just willing to go after it. You know, it's one of those things. And not to get on a tangent, I'll go back to the distribution side, but it's one of
Yeah.
the things I talk to a lot of my friends who are founders or of small businesses here locally, or even some of them who have grown pretty massive multi-million dollar operations. And it's kind of like a joke between us that you have to believe in yourself more than anything else. You have to. You know, it's like I'll tell my family. Hopefully, no, hopefully they don't watch this, right? Like I'll tell my family and like friends and like a lot of friends now that I have, they like see it because they've seen me do this over the last amount of years, and they're like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with it. But like I'll tell my family or people that I don't know as well, and I'm like, hey, like our goal, like they're like, what's your goal with the business? Like, what are you trying to build with it? And I'm like, I would love to get Zenjoy doing 50 to 100 million dollars in revenue yearly. I would love to eventually have an exit potentially of billions, or maybe we never exit. And they're like billions, and they start laughing at me. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's what always happens is
Yeah,
when you put your vision out for other individuals that don't think and see and feel the way that you do with your business, it's hard for them to conceptualize what you're doing.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
exactly.
that kind of brings me to my next question. Like, how do you go about finding other places to place Zenjoy at?
Yeah.
Like what are you guys doing to okay, so you got the giant and you've got other areas within the DMV, but I mean, you mentioned 500 locations. I mean, that's substantial.
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
you guys going about doing that and building that?
Yeah, and that was it actually takes me back to DSD and how we built that operation from the ground up. When we started with Zenjoy, and at the time Zen Hemp Infusions, I and my two partners, we kind of sat down one day, and it was I think it was actually Macklin's idea. He said, "Hey, let's just put product in our own cars and let's just go try to sell it." And so at the time I was driving around a Ford Ranger. You know, when it rained, I would put a tarp over the back and we'd pack it out with cases. And we had pallets sitting in a warehouse closer to DC, and we would just
Okay.
drive store to store. And we had a couple, so like for example, High's Convenience, the it's like a dairy but also gas station chain.
Yes,
You're
yes.
familiar with it? Awesome.
Yep.
So there's like about 50-ish locations of them, and the buyer, Mike Jackson, who's a great guy. Shout out, Mike. He kind of took a chance on us when we still had CBD in the drink and said, "Hey, I'll put it into the stores and try it out." And that gave us kind of a place to start and send people to. And then we just started going locally, like store to store, doing just basic sales, you know, stopping in sales sheets, here's samples, let me get your contact information, who's the manager, and just
Yeah.
pushing that and then stopping back week to week to week. And of course, like not all these stores are have worked out, right? Like it's kind of an ebb and flow when it comes
Right.
to building a brand like this, where of course, if you have the Coke and Pepsi distribution, or if some major company doing distribution, you can kind of open a ton of doors very quickly. Maybe you're paying a lot of money for that shelf space. Like for Royal Farms, for example, it's like thousands of dollars per shelf per store for a handful of facings. And that's usually how
Okay.
it works in a lot of these stores is you're paying a ton of money to get into some shelf space. You're paying a broker to get into the shelf space. But we decided, hey, let's just go door to door and see what we can
Yeah.
catch. And then eventually, when it comes to Giant, when it comes to the bigger groups, you're getting in touch with a buyer. You're going to have to get in touch with someone who's a category manager, or someone who works at what's called like center store.
Okay.
So center store is Giant, Food Lion. I think it's most of the Ahold groups work with center store, but different different these major groups like Safeway is under Albertsons, so they have their own version of center store that they work through,
Right.
and that's the corporate level above the store managers themselves. And these
Gotcha.
are people that are going to look at your product, they're going to test it out. It's so funny to me because they a lot of time are very biased toward what they like, and I always think that's kind of weird because they're really buying for the customer, not themselves.
Right.
But what we did was we got a launch with Giant through the category buyer at Giant at Center Store within Giant of Landover. His name is Matt Tetra, and he said, "Hey, I see you guys hustling." And this is a year almost after we decided to do our own distribution. So literally for a year almost, we were driving our own cars around, going to stores, doing deliveries. I was doing a lot of it at the time, and it was just opening doors. And at a certain point, Matt said, "Hey, I'll try you guys out." And then we're not the type of people to kind of just let it go and see what happens. You know, we said we're going to be in these stores all the time. We're going to be running events. We're going to be doing samplings. And now we're the number one in the set in Giant and natural tea. We're the number
That's
one
awesome.
in local in Food Lion, Maryland. And now they're going to be hopefully expanding us out into more stores. And that's the start. Like really how I see, I mean, there's kind of a two-pronged approach that I see people do. We are more on the side of taking it slow and putting the work in and really making sure it works immediately when we launch into any type of store. So, for example, Giant Eagle has us launching into 60 locations in PA, which is the biggest conventional grocery chain in PA. And the reason they're bringing us in is probably they see I mean, we're sending emails out all the time, right, to buyers. So like that's
Right.
the original connection. But then we're sending them data. We're saying, hey, this is our shelf turn. This is what we're doing in Giant. It's kind of a similar customer. It's a similar type of store. This is what we expect to see if we're in your stores. And then the buyers will sit down and they'll say, hey, I think we can do some type of small launch with them. So we're doing 60 stores into their functional set for Giant Eagle. And instead of
Okay.
throwing that product on the shelf and saying, hey, I hope it fucking works, which is
Yeah.
in my mind, we're going to be out there. I'm working on a brand ambassador program for that region. We're going to have the colleges locally out there that are near these stores that we're in and getting some ambassadors and having them run events on campus, having them run events in the stores themselves. We're going to go out there as the founders for a couple weekends and run events at these stores and just do the sampling and do the legwork. That it's funny because that's something that we also talk about internally all the time is when you used to build a business, it wasn't about let's raise all of this money, let's get all this capital and investment, and then pay ourselves a ton of money. And then the idea being, I don't want to be profitable. I want to build this company to as much of a valuation as possible and exit. And
Right.
I mean, of course, like that is a way to do it, and people still do it, especially in the tech space to this day all the time. But we're more on building a company organically like it used to be done. Like 50 years ago, before social media, before the internet, it was hustle. You see these massive, especially in the distribution space, you see these massive family-owned brands who are now worth 50, $100 million, and they're doing crazy distribution across multiple states, etc. But they started with one guy, or maybe two guys, or what girls, whatever, in their cars or walking the streets selling product. And they built door by door by door by door. And that way you actually own your business. I hate seeing so many founders, especially in our space, who have just raised a ton of cash. They've raised all of their equity away. And at a certain point, the gray hairs, what we call the gray hairs, come in and they take your business over and they run it for you. And at that point,
Right.
you don't own it anymore. It's not your business. You
Yeah.
might be there, but you may not even see anything of that because if they continue to raise money, you're going to get diluted even more. And if you have a couple percent and it sells for a few $1 million, it's like, what were you
What's
even doing?
Yeah,
What
what were you doing? Because at the end of the day, there isn't going to be much left
exactly,
for
exactly.
you.
Seth Goldman who's the owner of did Honest Tea and now Just Iced Tea. He's a great guy. Has become a little bit of a friend of ours in the space, considering we're
Okay.
all can be. And he had a wonderful thing to say about this, which is you don't want to take a long road to a small house.
Right.
And that's something
That's
that, I
I
mean,
love that.
yeah, me too. And it's something that I also tell a lot of local founders here. I'm like, I mean, number one, you have to look at your idea and what you're doing and just make sure like what does that category look like? Like what does that buyer look like? How many people are really going to be interested in this product? And of course, you still have to be a little crazy. Like no one's even jumped into stress relief drinks like we have, but we see the opportunity there as far as just adaptogens and how much people are spending on supplements in the same category. I mean, billions of dollars across the
Right.
world, right? And so that's something that we see kind of lines up. But there, you want to look at these numbers and make sure it really lines up to what you want to do. And if it's just a passion project and you don't expect to always make a ton of money and you're maybe working another job, totally fine, right? But like kind of break that stuff down and really look at what the end goal will be. And for us, I would love to, and the guys, we all feel the same way. I mean, of course, like $1 billion exit or something would be cool. But you also see groups like Monster out there who have been and have operated and owned their business for 50, 60 years. They were actually a juice company before they were Monster Energy.
Yeah.
And they kind of have, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of VC money in that now. They have a specific breakdown of their board, whatever it is. And it's something to me that I would love to be able to own and operate our business into the future. I want to keep my employees on. I don't want to have to worry about them getting stripped out of the company if we were to sell. I want to help
Right.
build people's lives. And that's something that we're all big on. It's like if you're building your company the right way and you're profitable, then you can just continue to kind of eat those like that's just going to be your money. And that's really what people used to build businesses around. It's not this weird raise higher value, raise higher value, spend all the cash until you can get an exit at a crazy valuation. It's like there used to be a way of very much simply building a business. And that's something that we're trying to get to. I mean, of course, we're raising capital, right? But really, we're not trying to over raise. There's a certain amount of money that we want to raise in our kind of lifetime of the business. So we
Yeah.
hold majority equity between the three of us, and that's
Right.
really where we want to stop. And then we become a bankable business. We can work with groups like JP Morgan to actually get loans and funding that way instead of having to, again, just continually lose our equity because you lose your business. It's not your business anymore. And that's not our goal. That's not really what we want to do, you know?
So with that being said, well, first of all, man, I love the transparency. I can see the grind. I love the
Thank you.
story. What's next? You know, kind of like what is so you've built this, you've had some different iterations over the years. Um, Next 5 to 10 years, what are we seeing? What are
Yeah.
we seeing from Zenjoy?
And that's a hard one. I'm like big on not I have ideas, you know, but I
Yeah.
try not to think too far into the future because things can change so quickly,
Oh,
especially
isn't
the
that the
world is
truth?
now, you know. So I try to only think a couple years ahead. So I think we're planned out to like 27, 28. And of course, you know,
Okay.
national, I mean, we of course want to be on the West Coast by 2028. So end of 2027, we really want to be on the West Coast in a big way in California,
Okay.
Colorado, some of the other states where we think that this product will just sell off the shelf if it's there. And
Yeah.
part of that is also we have the Olympics coming to LA in
Yep.
28. So I think that's a huge opportunity for us to get more on the world stage. I mean, it'd be just so cool. Do I think we're going to spend ad money on being at the Olympics? No. But do I think it would be really cool to just have people walking around in LA drinking Zenjoys? Yeah, of course. And I have friends now who live out there or in Denver, Colorado, or whatever, who look at our products all the time and they're like, wait, this is so cool. Like you guys would sling out here on the West Coast because that's beverage mecca. You know,
Right.
unfortunately for us, you know, that's really beverage mecca on the coast
Okay,
out
I didn't know that. So that is beverage mecca. It's the West Coast.
there. Yeah,
So
well, it's
you
almost
guys are building it here where
Mhm.
things aren't as big, if you will, but
Yeah.
kind of starting, getting that foundation, and then expanding.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's almost like CPG mecca. You know, that's just where a lot of the big food beverage brands have come from in the past 10
Okay.
years, and especially now with this big organic natural push. That's where a lot of the new brands are coming from. I mean, you see like big groups like Olipop are coming from the West Coast. And now there's a bigger scene in Austin, Texas. The guys like the Super Coffee guys are out there. But unfortunately, and it's something that I'm sure you're aware of as well, is like the DMV just doesn't have that much of like an entrepreneurial culture.
Yeah.
There's, and I'm sure that's something that like you're trying to build, I'm trying to build as
That's
well.
something I am trying to change.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I see so many founders who have started in the DMV and then they leave, you know, and they're
Oh, okay.
continuing to be here. And there's actually so many of us. There's just not many like groups for us to kind of get together and talk and have these conversations and build here organically together. I'm a big a person of saying there's more than enough for everyone. You know,
Yes.
an abundance mindset. You know, I'm not the type of guy
Yes.
to gatekeep or say, hey, I'm not going to pass you that contact information or whatever it is, because I think there's more than enough for everyone. But it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, you see in New York City, there's a huge entrepreneurial hub. I mean, it's fucking New York City, right?
Right.
The Tampa now is huge down there in Florida, but we have Austin, Texas, we have LA, California, Silicon Valley out there. And it's kind of unfortunate we don't have that here in the nation's capital and in the DMV because there is a lot here. It's just I feel like we're missing out on that major part as far as having those groups and those connections and places to meet, or maybe it's just a kind of a group of people that are trying to push it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I see where you're coming from with that. You
Yeah.
know, what would you say is one of the biggest or bigger mistakes that you've made that you've learned from and capitalized on?
That's a good one. That's a really good. I mean, I've made a ton of mistakes. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, as
I don't know what the
business
biggest.
owners, that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. One of the funnier ones that's like funny to look back now
Yeah.
is, and this is a big thing for CPG, and if anyone's watching and they like if they get it, they're gonna laugh at this a lot. Is when we first produced Zen hemp infusions. It was actually the mangoes. It was the mango cans. And
Okay.
this is my fault, you know, because I'm the one who handles a lot of the packaging stuff and a lot of the operations on that side. The UPC codes. I
Uh,
put the same UPC code on two cans. Now that, my friend, is a problem.
yeah.
And for two of our SKUs, we literally sat in the warehouse and I bought stickers online and we would sit in the warehouse for hours at a time and hand sticker every single can with a new sticker. And thankfully it was not, we don't do the same size runs that we're doing now where it's like 50, 15, 20,000 cans at a time. It was like
Right.
5,000 cans. So it wasn't that. And I know it sounds crazy. It's still a lot of product, but
Yeah, but
it's
still, that's a lot of
bigger.
cans to be putting
Yeah.
on, stickers on the on that. Oh, that's a lot of cans,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So that was really bad. Um, I mean that's probably the worst thing because of the way that we've with our previous business and what we went through there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think like we were very smart about how we built Zenjoy. We have an extremely long shelf life. The product moves itself, so we're not really worried about that. We're launching with what's called KeHE at this point. It's a big national natural distributor, natural organic distributor, and I've heard
Okay.
great stories of this group. I met a guy in DC at kind of a founder sit down thing that a buddy of mine put together who did a mango chutney brand 15 years ago when chutney wasn't even big in the US. It's funny because this is like a Jamaican guy, and he made this mango chutney brand. And he had a couple different SKUs, and he did a national launch with KeHE, and he got screwed. And I've always heard all these horror stories, but now I look because we're starting to work with them, and we have their term sheet and everything they sent us, and how they break everything down. And like line number 2 on the term sheet says you don't get paid. And of course, everyone has net terms, right? Like obviously, like for us, we've actually made it work very well. We have positive cash flow as far as we get paid before we get paid from our stores before we get paid or before we have to pay for our product. It's
Oh,
all
okay.
positive cash flow for us. So that way I'm always getting paid out from Giant or Food Lion, and I don't have to pay for my product until I'm already like 15 days past getting paid from Giant or Food Lion. So it helps
Gotcha.
build
Okay.
revenue. So we always have cash in the bank to be able to produce more product. Big deal for CPG because you're always producing more product.
Yeah.
But the key thing, like line number 2 on this document says the first order placed doesn't get paid out until all the product is sold and the second order is placed.
Wow. That doesn't seem like that's very quick.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, that's the thing. It's not quick at all.
Yeah.
Especially, let's say you do a national launch with KeHE into Sprouts, for example. So Sprouts is a big natural store, natural organic store. They have a few here in the DMV. They're growing very rapidly, actually. And let's say I think they may have 500 stores or something across. They might not even have that many, but you're paying to open all the warehouses. There might be a few $1,000s per warehouse. You're paying per SKU to get that product in there. You're opening up as far as what their operations are and all their back end and getting all the product put into their systems. So let's say you have to open up like 6 or 7 warehouses across the United States. You're paying for shelf space in every single Sprouts because that's how the game works most of the
Right.
time. And that paying is not necessarily paying cash, but maybe you're doing a free fill.
Yeah.
So your first order, if you're doing a free fill, to every store, half of your first order is already product you're giving away for free to these retailers. So you're not making any money there at all
Yeah.
again.
So you're not making any money there. You've got to
No,
wait for the second half to be sold.
exactly. Exactly. And but you're still paying out of pocket because you have to manufacture all of that product. So like let's say you do this national launch, you're paying $250,000 or whatever it is out of your own pocket to make it work, and then the product doesn't sell. That's it. What else are you going to do? You're literally in that term sheet. It says you're not going to get paid until your product is sold through and they put another order in. If your product doesn't sell, it only has a 6 month shelf life. Not only are you not making any money, KeHE's then going to charge you back at retail cost because they don't want to take a loss on the product. They want
Right.
to make their money on it because that's their business. They're a distributor. And of course, we have the same type of terms in our own distribution contracts. When for the couple brands that we work with, it's like, hey, if this product goes off on shelf and we have to credit it back into ourselves, we're crediting it at that full price because that's what my cost is going into the store, right? Like the
Right.
store is not going to have me credit it back at the wholesale cost. Like, no, they want their money for it.
Right.
So
Exactly.
very quickly, if you're not looking at the numbers and building this like a real business, your eyes will kind of get ahead of your feet, as the saying goes, right? And I was talking to one of my co-founders about this a couple of days ago, and I had a interesting idea around it where I think a lot of founders, especially nowadays, they're like dreamers, is what I say. Like they're visionaries. And that's great. And you need some of that energy always, right? Because you have to be a little crazy. You have to be able to see the next thing before everyone else. You have to be able to believe in it more than anyone else. And I understand that. But then you also have to be able to execute on that. And I think
Yeah.
so many
You got to be able to execute.
yeah, and I think so many people will just have an idea and they're like, this is a great idea. They throw it, they maybe get some investing capital, whether they have like we call FFF, friends, family, fools, they get some
Yeah.
they get some money injected into their business and then they don't execute, whether it's not doing ads correctly or whether it's not doing samplings or whatever it is. Or maybe you just kind of bite off a too big of a piece than you can chew. And that goes back to your question. Like we want to build very regionally. We don't want to overextend ourselves because we
Right.
know who we are as a business right now. We have an idea of how much money we're with cash flow, and of course, we're raising a little bit of capital right now. Hey, any investors, if you want to reach out to me. No, but I think we're on the verge of closing out at what's called our safe note, which is great, and then we might do one priced round. And that's really all we really want to raise until maybe we decide to do some type of crazy national launch and do some type of Series A, maybe a
Yeah.
couple down the line. But for now, we want to take it step by step. We have specific retailers that we would love to launch with regionally to continue to build our DSD, building out that fleet. I was literally in a few dealerships yesterday, just checking on prices for more ProMasters because that's what we run ourselves is ProMasters, so we can buy a couple more vans. Technically, we're operating 3 to 4 at any given time right now, and
Mm-hmm.
across the DMV, it's a lot of space, and we have a couple guys
Okay.
for us, one on the East Coast and one in kind of Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia. And so, of course, we work with some other distributors here locally. We have some of the smaller guys that have built their business doing distribution and really have the good connections. Not like the Dr. Peppers or the Cokes or anything. Like these are kind of, I don't want to call them mom and pop distributors, but you're talking about billion-dollar operations versus million-dollar, multi-million-dollar operations,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
But we love working with them because it's a real connection. They care about our product. They're interested in the product. So we have a couple of those guys. And as we raise a little bit more cash, we're of course jumping into Pennsylvania. We're looking maybe to go a little bit south with it. I'd love to look at doing New York City a little bit more. But every single one of these steps, it's a lot of money. And
Right.
that's the biggest part here is we need to make sure that we have some type of cash flow coming into the business so that we're not just continuing to raise. Because the unfortunate thing when it comes to CPG is you really, I mean, of course, there's more opportunities always, but you really get one opportunity. You launch into a chain, you launch into a store. If you don't sell well and they pull you next year when you reach out again, you think they're going to say yes? No, they're just not, because they already
No.
see the product. So we want to be very careful about kind of how we grow the brand. And I think at this point now, with our new can design and the way that we've now labeled the can, it's very direct. We know the flavors are good. The flavors have been good since we have had Zen Hemp Infusions. We work with an amazing co-manufacturer. We went down there. We had so many of our mentors, sorry guys, who said, don't put sugar in it. It's not the moving forward. Everyone wants sugar-free stuff. Everyone's going against sugar. And we kind of just decided not to do that and not to listen, and we put 15 grams of sugar in. A couple of our SKUs have some honey instead of just cane sugar, but it's all about 15 grams of sugar per can. And
Okay.
that's a lot. But most people, especially in conventional where we sell, it's not at anything at all. I mean, when we launched in the Food Lion in October into November, because it takes a long time to launch into all these stores, you got to open up every single door. So by like the third week of October, we were in all of the Food Lions that in Maryland. It's about 50 locations. We have a couple in Virginia, and moving into Delaware now. They're starting to expand us. We're talking to their team at the end of this week because we've been doing so well, which is great. Woo. And the product's been selling itself when we're on
Yeah.
display. And I think a big component of that is it tastes good. The price is decent. It's not super expensive, but it's not very cheap either. I mean, in Giant, we're like 350, but we're almost always on promo. So usually it's 2 for 6, 3 for 7, 2 for 5 is the deepest that we go anywhere. So 250 a can, which still isn't cheap by any means, but it's not expensive. It's more affordable than a $4 can, which is, a lot of the product in that natural or functional space can be that expensive. Energy
Okay.
nowadays are $3, $4 a piece for a 12-ounce can. But of course, people when they try it, they're like, "Oh wait, this is really good." It just tastes like good iced tea. And then they also get the benefits of that stress relief. And
Yes.
through that's the reason we've been able to be so successful. And we just want to take it step by step. Like we would love to do a launch regionally here in Safeway. We would love to do a launch regionally with Sprouts, Harris Teeter, Wegmans, Whole Foods. Like these are the big groups that we want to work with. But it's so funny because most of the time, especially when it's like Sprouts or Whole Foods, they want you to do more of a national launch. But
Oh,
that's
they do. They want you to go nationally and then kind of fill in locally.
well, I mean, no, they're just like Sprouts, for example. They really don't do regional programs, and that there's a few
Oh,
reasons for this, though. Honestly, Tony, it's the beverage space is so funny, and food and beverage in general.
okay.
And I never thought about this before I was working in the space now. When you walk into a grocery store, right? There's
Yeah.
product everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? And like to the average person, it's kind of like there's no rhyme or reason. Obviously, you have your produce and you have your milk and you have your deli, and like things are separated so it's a little organized. But every single spot in that store is what's called planogrammed. And so there's like kind of like a blueprint for every space on that shelf for almost any spot. I mean, there's probably 10% of the store that doesn't have planograms for it. And that might be some of the extra little displays that you see and things like that. But even the cardboard displays that you see in these stores, a lot of that is being paid for and planogrammed week to week from the corporate
Wow.
entities. Yes. And so I think a lot of it comes down to that back end work and the hiring it takes to actually have these planograms get created. Because for Sprouts, for example, like if they do a regional launch, that means they only can cut us into 50 stores or whatever it is in the Mid-Atlantic on that planogram. And that means those planograms will be different than the rest of
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
So it's kind of they are changing their planning to do that.
exactly. And that's just
I
not
got you.
their business. A lot of these locations have like a local set. So like Food Lion, for example, they have 500 stores up and down the East Coast. It's a pretty massive chain outside of Maryland. And so we were just put into the local set in
Okay.
Maryland because that's a planogram that's specific to different regions of
Gotcha.
but really what that is also a test for us. We do well enough there. We're doing well
And
enough
then
in
you can go to all of them.
that's the hope. You know, that's the hope. And then we wouldn't be in local. We would be just on what's called the mainline beverage set. So that's where the Coke and Pepsi products are. That's where all those energy drinks are in that store. And every single store it's a corporate, even the smaller stores that are like the mom and pops where there are two or three locations, like all of them have planograms. And so it's a lot of work to kind of move that stuff around and figure out and just looking at the numbers and figuring out what sells, what doesn't sell, what we need to pull. Maybe there's like, especially for the smaller stores, maybe there's some family and friends that have products in there. And then even though they're not selling super well, you don't want to pull them or you have
Right.
to keep out, okay, these customers might be coming in and buying these specific brands. If we pull it, how much revenue are we losing out on? Are we going to lose these customers when they're coming in and spending $100 every time on different products, but they're looking for that specific one that's there. So
Hmm.
a lot of nuance that goes into those shelves and the products on those shelves. And I think that's a kind of a big issue as far as the way that we're trying to build our business versus a lot of people in the space who just raise a lot of capital and can make it happen. Um, it's something that we are very want to be very careful about because you have one bad launch. Like I would hate to launch into a Whole Foods or something and have to do it nationwide or do multiple regions and not be successful and get pulled off of shelves. Because that's like
Yeah,
I'm
because then, like you said, then when you go back,
yeah, yeah.
they're gonna be like, if they respond, they're not
They
gonna.
respond. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And outside
I
of
see
that, I
what you're
mean,
saying.
yeah, and outside of that, I mean, the cost to go into a lot of these places, like it's a huge revenue loss if you're not winning there. And maybe the next time, like they said, hey, we'll do a free fill for you, but the next time you have to pay for a fridge program. So now not only is it a free fill, but they're like, we'll try you out again, maybe 3 to 5 years later, as you guys have grown, you have better sales numbers, but now you need to pay to do all of these other things in the store because they want to make sure there's a huge part of the business that's making money off the brands. Like all
Yeah,
those fridges and Giant that you see in the checkout aisles, all of those are owned and paid for by Coke, by Pepsi, by the brands in the fridges. 9 times out of 10, you're not just getting a spot in there for free. That's just not how it works.
right,
There's
right.
a huge, as far as on the corporate side of things, there's a huge way to build revenue just off of the brand spending money to have different displays to the store, the end caps in the store, the extra fridge placements, and that's for everything. I mean, for the everything from the cheese and the meats to the deli products and to the drinks. Everything is kind of being paid for. There's different programs in place. Obviously, like when you're on promo, you're paying for that. Like I have to pay a certain amount of cents per can to be on promo for every can that's sold. They're charging me for that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I
and-
believe I believe you're probably being charged for every little thing that
oh
someone
yeah,
can come up with.
oh yeah, and that's why it's such an interesting game. It is a big volume game because everyone has to go to the grocery store to shop. Whether or not you're ordering it online through Peapod or Instacart, someone is in that store pulling product off the shelf and putting it in a cart and bringing it to you. Or you're doing
Yeah.
it right. And so it is a huge volume game, and like that's the game that we're trying to get into is when you're in 10,000 stores nationwide, you're in all the big grocery chains, the amount of turn that you have, especially if you're doing like we're doing upwards of 7 cans a week. So at least a can or two a day is really what we're doing right now, which is really good volume. And
Okay.
if you're in 10,000 stores doing that, maybe some stores are doing half a can a day, maybe some stores are doing 4 cans a day, right? Like all of that stuff adds up, and that's really how you build these massive CPG operations. But I was talking to a friend of mine who is in like the direct to consumer, the e-com space. It's a supplement brand, and he's like looking to find a way to exit because he's grown this massive brand over the last 2 years just in supplements online. And so he was like trying to add extra value to his company so he can sell for a higher amount. And he's talking to me about trying to do a retail launch. And so I'm going through all these different things with him. And I'm like, I wish it was easy. He was like, how can I do this in the next 10 months? And I was like, I don't know if there's a way that you can do it in the next 10
I don't know if there's a way to get it done that quickly.
Yes, exactly. And for the ecom guys, when everything is so quick because it's really just online and putting when you're very good at it at a high level, it's still not like a second, you know what I mean? But within 24 or 48 hours, if you're putting ads in the right place, you're spending money in the right place, you can drive tons of traffic to that website because everyone has their phone at their fingertips, right? So whether you're doing ads online or on Instagram, you can push all of that traffic directly to your Amazon or to your online store and just kind of be having people buy and ship directly to them where there's not a presence in a store, a retail brick and mortar location. And I
Yeah.
was like breaking this down to him, and he's like, "This is absolutely ridiculous." You know what I mean? Like I'm telling him, okay, if you want to do a launch that fast, you're probably gonna have to work through a broker. They're gonna want X amount of thousands of dollars a month up front until you're making X amount of dollars through them, and then they're taking X percent, and then to get into these stores, you're gonna have to open up these warehouses that are the distributor to these stores, and that's gonna cost you money. And then to get into the stores, you're probably have to do a free fill with a display, and that display is gonna have to be on promo, and like all of these things are happening. And he's like looking at these numbers. He's like, does this even make sense to do? Like, is it worth it for me to do this? And the answer might be no. But for
Right.
us, long term, I mean, we just want to take it step by step. We want to have
Yeah.
that, and we're super blessed to have the distribution side of things where we can have some extra cash flow from other brands that we're putting into these stores, as well as Zenjoy locally here, which
Yep.
will help us kind of make that extra margin, be able to have a little bit more sustainability in cash flow. So that's, I think, a big part of it is just building that distribution side of the business. And when we launched Giant last year, we weren't even thinking about that. And now it's like a main idea in our brains. It's like, okay, that can be a real revenue builder for us while we don't make any profits selling Zenjoy into new states. Because all that money, like if I wanted to launch into New York City, it might be $50,000 just to work with the brokers to actually open up all these doors. And that's not cash necessarily coming out of our pocket. Of course, we're paying for samplings. There's what's called spiff deals that we're doing with these distributors, with these brokerages. So that way, hey, you sell X amount of cases, we'll give you this cash per case, whatever it is. But
Hmm.
a lot of that is just free filling product. And then if it doesn't sell, I mean, especially in New York, they want to see a specific turn because there's so many people there. They have higher rates that they want to see in the stores. And if it doesn't sell, you're just getting dropped out of the store, especially like these mom and pop bodegas. Those guys, they have no, like, I mean, they might still have some type of planogram as far as how their store is set, but there's no one saying like, hey, we have to keep this for 6 months. If the owner's like, hey, it's been here for 3 months and I haven't sold my first cases of the product that I got, even if it's free, they're like, I don't want this shit anymore. And
Right.
that's it.
Right. I can see where that could be definitely an issue. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so it's kind of a funny game. It's we always say that we're fighting a war every day. It's very bloody in the streets of CBG because you're always fighting every other brand for extra space. Like especially nowadays, the way the economy is, no one's spending more money. So if someone's picking up a Zenjoy or someone's picking up a water or whatever it is instead of another product, that other distributor that distributes that product is saying, wait, where are my dollars going? And then
Exactly. They're losing money because you're gaining money.
yeah, yeah, and I guess I mean I was talking abundance earlier, but everything has its kind of its own flow, like
Yeah.
when it comes to those types of stores and these retail locations, especially with the economy is, and if we were talking maybe like 6, 7 years ago, it would be a different conversation, right? Because people are making more money, the economy's doing very well, people have extra cash to try products out, but now it's like we talk a lot about perceived what's the word I'm looking for? Perceived value in a
Right.
product. And that's a big thing for us. And that's why we've taken this to say instead of relaxation drink, it says stress relief drink right here on the front. So it's our new packaging literally says stress relief drink here right on the front. And actually, I might have them. I try to keep all of the old cans that we've done. So
Okay.
I show them all. Oh, I do. Look at that. But it's really cool to be able to have all of the cans lined up next to each other here. Let me show you so you can see the difference between these are printed cans without an end. So they're just,
Okay.
and these are the sample cans that we got originally when we designed these. So I don't know if you can see, hopefully, maybe get an idea here.
Yeah, one says stress relief drink, one says relaxation.
Yeah. And of course, the colors on this are bigger, the fruit's bigger. And then on the back, we've also added tons more information on the ingredients.
Yeah.
So people can look at the can. We see so many cans in the stores. Like whenever I put a can on the shelf, it's like this, so you can see the branding. And
Yeah.
when I see a can like this on a shelf, that shows me that someone and the store staff is also trained to always have the stuff facing out. This shows me that a customer picked it up, read it, because they're reading it to themselves like this, and then put it back down facing backwards. So that
That
tells
yeah,
me
that's exactly what that says.
we need more information on the can, right? And that's something that we are figuring out ourselves. That's not a company saying, hey, you guys need to put more information. It's because we've spent so much time in the streets and in these stores talking to people. We're like, okay, that's what they're asking. That's what they need. The stress relief drink perceived value, again, it's huge. People will say two for $5. I'll try it if it actually helps. And they might see the ashwagandha there at the top. They already know what that is. And they'll say, oh, I know ashwagandha. I know this will work for me. And then they pick one up and then we go from there. And it becomes a thing
Yeah.
that they're buying every day. It's like Red Bull. When Red Bull came into the States 20 years ago, I mean, they had a ton of funding behind them, so not necessarily the same situation. But when they came into the States originally, they were actually not even carbonated. And in Thailand, still to this day, I have a buddy of mine who lives in Thailand, and he sent me pictures of an uncarbonated Red Bull in Thailand that they still sell there.
Wow.
Yeah. They had to change that because what they did was they were putting it on the shelf and no one really liked it because it wasn't carbonated. They said, okay, we need to make it more soda based because the US is big on soda. And so that's why they carbonated it. And then they started branding around energy drinks and buying up shelf space. So it was right in your face. And that's how they started that flow of energy drinks throughout the US. I mean, that's very
Uh-huh.
simple way of putting it. But it's perceived value. People were already drinking coffee, they were drinking caffeine. The ingredients didn't change at all. It was just the way you were actually taking these ingredients and drinking them. And so they were able to build that market, and that's what we hope to do with Zenjoy as well. Like I said earlier, these ingredients are already decently well known. I mean, ashwagandha is super trendy right now. People really do know what that is. Not,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more trendy than energy drinks in Google Trends, which is a good sign for us. And we can just take these ingredients, make it more fun, and just make it, hey, instead of you taking a supplement, you can use a Zenjoy. Like it's easy access, it tastes good, it's fun to talk about. All the events that we do, I had someone post on Instagram and tag us the other day. They're having like a girls' night for something. And a lot of these events we're sponsoring where they'll reach out to me and say, hey, can we have some free product? And I'll send them a case or whatever, or we'll deliver it locally here on our vans on that of delivery day. And these are just some women who picked up a cans from Giant or Food Lion or an independent store across the DMV, and they were using them that night, and they were tagging us on Instagram and saying this was like a perfect way to end the day or whatever it is.
That's
And
awesome.
to see that is so cool, not only as a founder, but also just proving concept behind what the brand is and the value behind it. And as we grow, we're hopeful that the new cans and what we do with new flavors in the future will be able to continue to build off of that. That perceived value around this really does work for stress. Everyone has so much stress. Like, what does that look like? I don't mind spending $2, $3 for a can that's going to help me with stress.
Yeah, yeah, because stress is a huge issue
Mhm.
for a lot of individuals. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you could just be selling this to business owners and
Yeah, dude.
doing really well.
Where we sell the best right now is, and it's a little off season, so people are just now getting back into the office. But our number one client right now is a hospital.
Oh, okay.
VA Health makes sense. I've coined this term with the guys. It's called like high stress zones.
Yeah,
These are places like offices, schools, hospitals. It's all food service accounts. There's are places in cafeterias where these people have very high stress in their lives, and it's another reason why we got away from relaxation drink, because maybe in a hospital that could work in a hospital setting. People are looking to kind of relax or kind of get away from whatever they're going through there. Um, but in a school or an office setting, sometimes people say, "Well, I don't want to be too relaxed." Then there's the question: Is it going to make me tired? there's so many things that are going through the mind when you're looking at that, that's why we said, oh, you know what, let's change that to stress relief drink. Right
Yeah.
there. That way there's not that negative connotation with, am I going to be tired or too relaxed? It's really just like, let me be able to get in the flow state and get my work done. Let me get away from the anxiety from that meeting, the stress from that meeting, and be able to just make it happen, or whatever my manager was yelling at me for, let me fix that problem. It's not like I'm going to go take a nap, you know.
Right.
That's
Right.
something that we're always kind of trying to think about what our consumers are asking. Of course, we spend so much time talking to people. We also are able to kind of get a handle on that in real time, without having to run a lot of these like test studies or pay someone to sample X amount of people and get their responses. It's like, no, we can do this in real time, talking to
Yeah.
people, without surveying or anything like that. We're able to just kind of get a handle on what people are asking and what they're looking for. And the hope is into the future we'll be able to continue to do that, whether it's expanding into new flavors, or we have a lot of people, because we do use sugar, say, hey, I can't drink it as sugar. So like in the future, we're gonna do some type of, I don't know if it'll be called Zenjoy Zero, you know what I mean? But like some type of Zenjoy Zero that has no sugar. And maybe we'll do something I really want to do in the future is do some type of carbonated, not tea. We've tried that. I just don't, none of us really like the flavor of carbonated tea, and we're big flavor people. It has to taste good if you're going to be a beverage, in our opinion.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, and we see the big guys kind of trying and failing with new products all the time because they just don't. And at least in my opinion, it's because they don't taste good as what it is a lot of times. Because you could have the highest perceived value in the world, but if it doesn't taste good, no
No
one
one's
wants it.
drinking it.
No one wants it. And we hope to be able to just kind of build on that. So whether it's doing soda or seltzers or no sugar, just kind of working with what people are asking us for instead of just trying to guess or go off our own bias of what the product should be. Really, we should be trying to listen to the customers and the people that are supporting us and buying our brand and saying, like, what do you guys want? And trying to build off of that.
That's awesome. Daniel, I have really enjoyed our conversation today. It has been amazing. I feel the grind that you're doing. You know what I mean? I love your story. I like to end with just come up kind of couple off the cuff questions if it's okay. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily Zenjoy or business related, but it's just kind of, well, I guess it would say business related, but just kind of a couple three quick questions to kind of close things out. Is that okay?
I'm getting a little stressed. I might have to drink a Zenjoy here. I don't know.
Okay, question number one.
Hit me.
What is the best advice you've ever been given?
I have a bad memory, Tony. I have a really bad
Okay.
memory. I'm trying to think the best advice that I've ever been given.
Whether that's
Okay.
through your mentors,
Yeah.
whether that's before Zenjoy and a different company, but like kind of, I mean, kind of like something that you live by. I know you mentioned
Yeah.
abundance, but like, is there anything that kind of comes to mind as far
There is
as,
there is one thing that comes to mind. I've had so many people across many different places, whether it's in business or whether like, the one interaction that really comes to mind is I was, and it's like not a great place for it to come from, but I was in a hospital because my dad had gotten surgery years ago, and I was spending a lot of time there because he just got surgery, and I was just going to see him, spending time with him, etc. And I had an older woman tell me like, I don't know why I'm a big talker, so I'll just talk to anyone, anywhere, all the time, crack jokes, whatever it is, and start a conversation.
okay,
And I had an older lady who must have been in her 70s or 80s, and she said, she was like, "Oh, baby, just take it slow." You know what I mean? Like, don't push too far ahead. Like, don't go over yourself. I mean, I think she was mentioning it in the form of a relationship, actually, like a romantic relationship. But I try to take that for everything that I do in life. Of course, there's times that you need to act quickly and make something happen, make a decision on something. You don't want to be too slow. And I guess that's kind of like relative, right? But in
mm-hmm.
like, take it slow, take your time with things. If we had launched Zenjoy a year ago and into more regions, or without this new branding that's with the stress relief drink and the beautiful colors and the expansion there, I don't think we would have been we wouldn't be successful. So it's good that we've taken our time to build this. We've taken the last few years, and even though sometimes for us as the founders, it's really hard because we'll see people that are our age or whatever growing so quickly, and we're saying maybe we should be doing the same thing, but we need to come back to our roots and just take it slow, day by day. piece by piece and really know what we're doing and build in the right way. And I try to use that for everything I do. I try to use that for personal relationships, romantic relationships, building my business. Like you don't need to jump all the way into it that quickly, right? Like just take your time. Be
I love
patient.
that.
As hard as it is, I know
Yeah,
it's
as hard
so
as
fucking
that,
hard.
that is one of those things that is easier said than done.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
No,
what
I
he
love that.
was
I
telling
love
me
that.
it was.
So let me ask you this.
Oh
Let
yeah,
me
hit
ask
me.
you another
Go ahead.
question. What would your loved ones say you do for a living?
Now they would say I sell beverages. I'm
Okay.
a stress relief drink. But
Okay. Okay. So they're pretty much on
they're in
point
it.
with it.
They're in it. Yeah, but my dad, that reminds me of a time my dad was telling his neighbors that I was selling because when we did the CBD thing, I was telling everyone we sell CBD flower, like the buds themselves, right? And I remember I was at like my dad had invited me for dinner with his neighbors or something like that, and I'm just hanging out talking to them, and he was like, "Oh, he sells CBD flower, like cooking flour." It's just awesome, But now it's a simple business, It really is a simple business. It's a beverage, so everyone knows that we do stress relief drinks. So that's it's
Okay.
thankfully at this point we've gotten there.
You've built the brand. I got you. I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah.
Okay. Last one for the day, and that is this. I always go back to this for my last question. That is, if you could give yourself any advice, you know, in the beginning of your
Mhm.
journey as a founder, that what would that be that is something that you haven't done already? Or maybe that you've done, but you did it because
Okay.
you implemented it after learning.
I was thinking more on like the mental side. I was more
Okay.
like just be more gentle with yourself, especially as founders, as people who own businesses, we can be really hard on ourselves and what we're doing and things that have gone wrong, et cetera. And I think just being a little bit more gentle with ourselves. Like obviously you need to be disciplined. You need to be doing those tasks every single day to build your business, but like be a little bit more gentle with yourself. If something doesn't happen immediately, you can't kill yourself over it. You got to keep being able to move forward without kind of that there's already so much stress everywhere. You got to be able
Hmm.
to not do that. As far as an action goes, I think it might just be like I wish we had jumped into doing the distribution stuff sooner. I think like I wish that we had just said to ourselves, "Hey, let's try to make this happen and just go start knocking doors." And we were always doing a little bit of that, but we were really trying to rely on the big guys to help build us, and that's just not how it works. You need to be able to knock doors and build yourself. And that's what I tell anyone now that I'm meeting, whether it's a clothing brand or someone trying to do food and beverage. I'm like, knock doors, go talk to people, be out in the streets. Like we cannot be keyboard warriors. That's what
Right.
everyone is. I mean, if you're doing an e-com brand, it's a little bit different, but when you're have a clothing brand or a product that you want to sell in stores yourself, you have to knock doors. You have to go talk to
Yeah.
people in the streets as much as possible, whether it's doing networking events and meeting people that way, or it's knocking doors and doing sales. I think a big thing that I would have told myself 5 years ago is like just get out in the field and do more. Get off your laptop and just go into the field and spend as much time there and like do the laptop stuff at night. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
you do a 9 to 5 during the day and really push there, like spend that time in the field and then spend the 5 to 9, 5 to 10 afterwards doing the laptop stuff, doing the emails, whatever it is.
Cool. Cool. Well, listen, Daniel, I have really enjoyed our time today.
Yeah.
Daniel is
Me
the
too.
co-founder and COO of Zenjoy. I've really enjoyed our time today. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Definitely. Hopefully we can meet up in person sometime in DC. We're gonna build this DMV founders thing. You know what I mean? We need to get more of us entrepreneurs together. We need to do that. And we can support each other.
Definitely.
Just more than enough for everyone.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tony. Had a good time.
All right.